Numbers from Statistics Canada show Canadian exports to the United States are near their lowest point ever. Every year, about $3.9 billion worth of Canadian nickel goes to Detroit. This nickel helps power America's electric vehicle industry. But in August, things changed. President Trump signed an order putting a 20% tax on electric vehicles. This tax did not only target China. It also hit Canada, America's oldest trading partner and neighbor. There was no special deal or new talks. It was simply a tax high enough to block trade. Canada took this very seriously. Instead of making threats online, Ottawa started planning actions. They saw the tax as an attack on North America's battery supply chain. For decades, nickel from Sudbury, Ontario has been sent to Detroit. Each year, about 185,000 tons of nickel and copper ore go to U.S. battery factories. This trade is worth over $3.9 billion. It is a key part of American EV production. Nickel is very important for electric car batteries. A typical SUV battery uses about 38 kilograms of nickel. At today's prices, that nickel costs about $775 per battery. With the new 30% tax, the cost of each battery will rise by about $230. Now each battery will cost around $950 to $1,020 more. For car companies like GM, this will cut profits from 10.1% to 8.3%. Experts say this tax could reduce EV sales in the US by about 94,000 in 2026. It will make prices higher. It will lower profits. It will make American electric cars less competitive. It could also mean job cuts for engineers and higher costs for buyers. By the end of July, Canada had a plan with 4 main steps. A 15% export tax on raw nickel going to U.S. battery makers. A carbon tracking system so that only low-emission nickel from Ontario can trade easily. A $257 million investment in the Quebec-Ontario corridor to make new battery technology that uses less nickel. Special tax deals to secure a large battery plant in Windsor. The Canadian government says these steps could shift over $1.8 billion in exports away from the US to South Korea and the European Union by 2027. Carney did not post on social media. He did not shout. But in private meetings, his message was clear. Nickel and cobalt are as valuable to Canada as diamonds. And Canada will not hesitate to use taxes as a weapon. This made the White House go quiet. Because when you cut off someone's lifeline, they might fight back even harder. Ottawa did not just react. They changed their plans. They rerouted their trade. They started selling their nickel to other countries. The numbers show it clearly. In the first half of 2025, Canada's nickel sulfate exports went up by 23%. But here is the important part. The US share of that nickel went down. South Korea and Germany quickly stepped in to buy more. While Washington was focused on building tariff walls like it was the 1930s, Canada's new partners were busy signing delivery deals. Nickel that used to go to Michigan is now going to Hamburg and Seoul. What does that mean for America's electric car industry? It will now depend on nickel from Indonesia and the Philippines. This nickel is cheaper. It is dirtier. It is much worse for the environment. Let's talk about emissions. Nickel from Ontario produces only 4.22 tons of CO2 for every ton of nickel because it uses clean hydropower. Nickel from Indonesia produces about 36 tons of CO2 per ton, almost 9 times higher. Nickel from China produces about 18 tons per ton of metal. Here is the problem for the US starting in 2026. The European Union will charge a carbon border tax of €115 for every ton of CO2. That means if American electric cars are made with dirty nickel, they will face huge extra costs to be sold in Europe. The US government called this policy economic protection. But it is becoming a big mistake. It is also an environmental mistake. Because when you push away your cleanest supplier, you are left with high taxes and products that are hard to sell overseas. Now the US has three choices. And none are easy. Option 1. Make a special deal for Canadian nickel. The 30% tariff stays for everyone else, but Canada gets an exemption. This would keep nickel flowing from Ontario to Detroit and save US electric car plants money. Option 2. Stay tough and keep the full tariff for everyone. Canada will answer with a 15% export tax. They will sell more to Europe and South Korea. They will give less to the US. Detroit will be left scrambling for nickel supplies. Option 3 is to take a middle path. Lower the tariff to 20 to 25%. Fix the US-Canada Critical Minerals Alliance. Hope the EU delays its carbon tax. It is not perfect, but it will cause less damage than now. Experts say there is a 60% chance the US will choose option 1 or 3. There is a 40% chance things will go badly. GM is not waiting. They already cut their 2026 electric vehicle production forecast from 360,000 to 310,000 units. That is a $3.2 billion change, and no one is happy about it. Maybe the 47th president calls this negotiating. For most people, it feels like making your neighbor take the bus and then wondering why your driveway is empty. While trade officials sit in cool offices, everyday Americans see car prices and walk away. Because of the 35% tariff and higher nickel costs, the price of the F-150 Lightning could reach $72,500 by early 2026. That is not just expensive. That is, might as well buy a boat, expensive. The gas-powered F-150 XLT still has a 15 to 20% lower total cost over 8 years. The electric truck has become a luxury. The gas truck is now the better value. These tariffs were meant to protect American workers. Right now, they are protecting oil profits instead. Voters were promised cheaper and cleaner cars. Now they are being pushed out of the electric vehicle market. This is not good policy. It is hurting the US supply chain and helping its competitors. The Biden team wants 50% of new car sales to be electric by 2030. At this pace, it looks more like 20% hope and 80% sticker shock. Ontario is not asking for special treatment. It is finding new buyers for its nickel. If Sudbury cannot send nickel south, it will send it east. The EU needs clean minerals. Canada's low-carbon nickel is a perfect fit. South Korea has already increased its imports from Ontario by 18% since March. While Washington builds tariff walls, Ontario builds trade bridges. In this new mineral game, they are not the pawn. They control the center of the board. Nickel, once just a boring metal, is now a powerful bargaining chip. Ottawa is holding it with confidence. Canada is not losing power. It is realizing it never needed US approval. The real game is not in Washington. It is in Sudbury. The nickel that once powered America's electric future is now a diplomatic landmine. A $3.9 billion trade route between Ontario and Detroit is now blocked by bad math and bad politics. Nickel now decides who can build what, where, and for how much. If the US loses Ontario's clean supply, who will invest in electric vehicle plants in Michigan? Tariffs do not just raise prices. They scare investors away. Canada is moving on. Europe is opening its ports. South Korea is signing deals. In Washington, leaders call it a win. In reality, America's battery belt is losing supply. So here's the real question. If the US keeps shutting the door on allies, how long before those allies stop knocking? Or have they already stopped? Share your thoughts in the comments. And subscribe for more simple breakdowns of global economic and political moves.